I think, see, I've seen the evolution of software for the last around 17, 18 years, right? So the evolution has been this way. As a developer, and I would say till about say 2012 or 2010, 2012 time frame, we were essentially, for us, development basically meant knowing a specific tech stack, tech stack like Java, .NET, Ruby or Python, right? And most of us would essentially be focused around, one specific area, like for example, like a web development or a desktop application development, or maybe a server side, or maybe just services, right? So, and things were going on well till that point. But then cloud and DevOps came along, right? So there was a necessity to kind of actually deploy, what I would call as cloud native or cloud based services or cloud based applications, which were really distributed in nature. The architectures were a little different. The deployment models were little bit different. So that necessitated some the teams to be restructured in the sense that you couldn't really in a very efficient way deliver software to cloud by having old isoc skills or horizontals, if you will, right? The release cycles, cloud, pioneered by Amazon, Netflix, Google and Facebook, and what's essentially called as the FANG companies, right? FANG. So they started showing the way that the small teams could actually deliver software quicker, which are more complex, more distributed. And one of the key elements of success for that was to have, these set of skills, which can help you, put things together very quickly, right? You don't necessarily have, very deep expertise in one area, but you essentially work with a team, a small team, which probably is specialized in their own way in different areas. So each of the team represented that T-shaped skill kind of a thing. So, like what Dilip said as well, right? So, jack of all and master of one, right? So, this structure essentially became the de facto way of building softwares in a very agile way, in a very productive way, and at a rapid scale, right? So, people would also actually get into the domain of very internet scale applications, building internet scale applications at a very rapid pace, right? And part of that was also, fueled by the burst of mobile applications, right? So people started releasing mobile apps at a really, really fast pace, and you really couldn't, have have a project cycle of 1 to 2 years. That's what the project cycles were when I started my career. 2 years seemed to be a decent, time to do a project. But with cloud and mobile, the projects, the expectations from customers was not, to have a mobile app that's updated every 2 years, right? You, in fact, you see an update every week. So that kind of agility forced people to rethink the way their teams are structured, and therefore how their skills have to be. So that's my experience. That's been the evolution, right? So from six from 2 year projects to 6 months to now, you're just talking about few weeks. You actually see apps that are developed in just a matter of few weeks, that are end to end, right? It may have a small slice of functionality, but people still release software because the idea is to ship more often, right? So that's the evolution that I've been seeing, which is, I think, the trend going forward as well, that you actually work in teams which ship really, really fast. I think folks like Dilip might, who run startups, might actually throw some light on this as well. But that's agility is very key, and how you and your skills in full stack is very critical to teams that release software very quickly, right? Especially in the cloud and mobile world. So that's, in a summary. I may have just scratched the surface here, but that's the the essence of what I've been seeing. Things progress over the last few years. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. How do we keep up with the proliferation of all these technologies? Even as an experienced professional, it is very difficult to gauge like which technologies are going to last long, which would be good for career growth. And in that manner, like how do we expect a fresher to take a career path?
Yeah. So, this is a very competitive world now, right? So when India's led the forefront of software, IT services, IT enabled services, like 20-25 years ago, there was virtually no competition, right? So because we had the people, and we had the talent pool necessary to create large services organizations and stuff like that, right? And we kind of have had a good time growing and delivering projects to large enterprise customers all over the world and all that. So but what has been happening more recently is that uh, there are talent pools across the world now. People are getting more and more competitive, like be it English speaking countries, or those that are also have a good mix of technology and language skills, right? So there is competition. That's one. B, there is a shift away from people or resource based projects, right? So earlier you just need headcounts, large headcounts, and people and that would not be a problem in a country like India, where there would be large amount of talent pools, right? People, it is just a matter of adding people to projects, and you're good. Right now it doesn't necessarily work like that. So you have a lot more emphasis on getting software out quickly, getting software out on a very limited budget, because IT budgets are always on the way down. CIOs are always under pressure to kind of deliver uh, more complex software quickly, and the emphasis on adding people is a lot less. So that's one. And the other aspect is that um, uh, you actually have a lot of pressure from the innovation that you see in companies like Facebook and Netflix and Google, right? Which are actually putting pressure on enterprises to kind of release software at that rate and that velocity, right? So that's kind of shifting how a regular product company or a services company thinks about how to deal with technology. So so that is the that's the context, and how the expectations are, right? So you are expected to you know uh, you know and it is a given. I mean, it's a big challenge that because of companies like Google, there is a lot of pressure on how good technology, and I would say open technology is kind of coming into the market at that pace. So the onus is on us to be competitive. I talked about competition in the globe, right? Both in the product and services space, right? So the onus is on us to kind of be up, have pace with that level of innovation, especially in the open source technologies that are pretty much driving innovation these days, right? In software. So you have to make an effort to play in this competitive landscape, in my opinion. Otherwise, you'll just be irrelevant, right? So either somebody else will replace you somewhere else in the world, or there'll be a product or a technology company like Facebook or Google or Amazon that would bring in services that make certain jobs irrelevant. So the only way to keep up is to kind of have that competitive edge with respect to skills and agility. I actually don't want to see them separately in developers or engineers these days. In fact, I don't use the word developer these days. I broadly like to use the word engineer, because you have to bring in many skills, many more skills than just development, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. But the excess amount of pressure that companies like Google are are kind of putting in for other companies, is forcing us to also rethink how we think about, as engineers, how do we keep up? So that is a challenge that you will have to think about, and it's an ongoing effort. In fact, I have not stopped learning, and I can't afford to us also. If I stop learning, I'll be irrelevant, and I'll probably not have a job, in the next 3-4 years. Simply put, right? Because I just cannot say that I was a Java guy 15 years back, and now all I know is Java, right? It probably wouldn't be, because there won't be a job which will just give value to experience. You would need skills to kind of quickly and agile, develop software in an agile way. So I think it's important to keep up. It's a very big challenge. I agree. Right. We'll talk a little bit, maybe some ideas there, but we have to think about this as, the new normal. We have to, the new normal is to keep learning. Learning never stops, whether you're 3 years experience or 6 years experience or 10 years or even 20 years experience. You will have to keep pace, and that's the new normal. Sorry, long answer, but I hope that, did it make sense?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That was a very wonderful answer. Like, we need to keep on learning, and that is a given. The only trouble people faces, like especially the freshers and even some experienced professionals, is like how do we identify the right things to keep learning? And even motivated people find it difficult to find the right things to keep learning. So, what do you suppose?
Dilip, do you want to throw some light on that as well? I mean, you've been an entrepreneur yourself, with
Yeah.
extensive skills in full stack space, right? I would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah. So what I've always done, which always helped me, was rather than asking about some outdated advice, right? Even if I give a straight advice, it's going to be outdated, like in a month. So what always helped me is going through the job posts that companies post in the links that I shared previously, and sort of like seeing what are all the things that are recurring again and again, and the things that you don't know, pick it up one by one and learn it. So that will help you sort of like stay above the crowd. So that's how I've always proceeded with my career as well.
Awesome. So we have another entrepreneur called Ashwin. Okay, so he also created a startup, and he has created a few mobile apps. And he would like. Would you like to add a few points, Ashwin?
Yeah, hi. Can you all hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name's Ashwin. So just to give a small intro on our startup, it's called Plento. And we provide actually doorstep cash pickup services. So in terms of doorstep cash pickup services, the challenges are many. And we essentially offer the service to businesses. So to start off, where should I start, Arvind?
No. So since we have other members like Manoj and Dilip in the panel, okay, maybe you can start off with questioning them about their
Yeah,
experiences.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I just got in. Sorry, I just got in a little late, so I'm not aware of your backgrounds. So in any case, in terms of technology and those aspects, what are the long-term roadmap for products? Because of this ever-changing environment, as you had mentioned, Manoj, right? Who was that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of long-term goals, how can you set long-term goals in this ever-changing environment? From a day-to-day basis or a month-to-month basis. How do you set up the plan? Because if you see Amazon, I heard a talk of his. He was saying he has a roadmap for 10 years or 15 years. He's already planning for that stage of his company. While we are all working for today's problems.
Yeah, Ashwin, was that a question directed to
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah, Manoj.
Yes,
Yeah, if
yes.
you can answer that, please.
Yeah, so that's a good point. See, let me put it this way. Um, Companies like Amazon, I would say Amazon is one of the most foremost technology pioneers in the industry today. Just to give a perspective, every category that they enter, be it retail or any subcategory under retail, be it cloud services, which is AWS, be it artificial intelligence, which is Alexa, or
Yeah.
be it media streaming or entertainment, which is their Prime, right? So and a whole host. I'm just maybe just mentioning the top. What helps them get that get that existential threat status from compared to other players is that they have a very, very, very sound, solid engineering technology expertise and foundation. In fact, AWS was a project that spun out of some of the work that they did for retail, right? Where managing infrastructure for their e-commerce site, right, which is Amazon.com, and AWS actually spun out of the the idea that we are managing infrastructure that is so elastic, and we have the technology to kind of really manage this in a software defined way. So why don't we spin that off as a separate business, right? And then of course the rest is history. So AWS is now by itself for a $14 billion business or something of that sort, right?
Right.
Which is probably more than the rest of the cloud providers combined. So the foundation, I mean, in fact, even for even companies like Google, the core foundation for technology has been laid several years back, and that's everything's been built on top of it, right? For example, the Google's number one revenue is probably ads, ad delivery, through various platforms like mobile, web, etc. The foundation of that was probably laid in the late 90s, right? When they really started off the page rank and all that stuff. So large companies, product companies, like even Netflix have had a long vision outlined based on good technology investment and product road mapping that they do today, right? So the the way they're able to actually project a roadmap because of the fact that they have confidence in the way their technology evolves, and the solidity of and this solidity, resilience, and the scalability of the platform that they have today, right? For example, Amazon can really add a new category every week, right? Which is unthinkable in organized retail space, right? So they can do that because their technology is very elastic, right? Their infrastructure is elastic. So that's the foundation that they have. So I think any startup that or any product company or even a services company, when you think about the service that you're delivering, whether it's a product service or whether it's a service for a line of business application user or whatever have you, right? An employee or a customer, a consumer, you will really have to think about the scale and the vision of actually serving this at a very, very large scale several years from now, and be ready with a platform that works in a very agile way. It shouldn't be that I have to rewrite my application every 2 years to suit a new market or expand into a new geography or serve maybe more 100 million users, right? So the foundations of growth have to be laid out in the architecture, and that's what I think Amazon and Google are doing very well. So of course, part of the I'm just talking about from the technology perspective. Of course, a lot of other things like markets and everything, but from a core technology perspective, I think engineering foundation is very key. That's what I think, and that's what I think is the differentiator for a lot of companies that actually grow more than the others, because they have a solid technology foundation, right? So you may have a great business idea, you might have a solid business team, solid marketing team, you might have a great sales team, but if you don't have solid technology that scales, and when people use it, and with all of a sudden you release the app to 100 a million people, and the experience is bad or the server crashes, there's a almost an irreparable impact to your reputation, and once reputation goes, right, you probably, your business will die down. So that's why technology foundation is critical, and good engineering and good technology investment actually becomes very important, and that's what the FANG companies are doing very well. And I think irrespective of what business we are in, whether it's IT services or products, or a product enabled or a solution enabled, or it could be a SaaS solution, whatever it is, right? So I think we really have to think about good technology foundation, and that's what I think. Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. And what about the kind of architectures you would use generally? So a little bit when you're starting out as a startup, the context is that. So would you suggest something like a microservice architecture or anything else that you might have in mind in terms of technology stack and for scalability and durability and etc.?
So, good question. So, I think the again part of the evolution that I talked about earlier is the fact that when 15, 20 years ago, for us, software development was just about compiling a library, or packaging an application, and that was it, right? As most of us who are developers would essentially just probably build a solution or create a jar file or create a DLL or create a set of EXEs or whatever, and be done with it. That was the end of it, right? But now we are just talking about a solution, a space where development is just not done by just packaging your binaries, right? It's also about how you deploy them, and deploy them on a cloud infrastructure, for example, that actually is agile, it's scalable, it is actually is distributed in the sense that it can, each part of the application can scale to any user load. Like, for example, you do a marketing campaign, tomorrow you put a radio ad or a TV ad, you will get probably 20,000 installs. So the question to answer is really, are you ready for that scale? By spending some marketing money on something like TV or Times of India front page, right? You will get a lot of crowd. So you'll have to think about, okay, can I just actually have my application scale to this load, and if required, scale down if the load is not that high, because I want to also optimize my cost. So these are things you have to think about as developers. Like when I started my career, infrastructure was something that we didn't even know about. We just know, all that we knew is somebody would take this code and deploy it on some server somewhere in some data center, and everything would work magically. That is how we started our careers, right, as developers. It's not the case anymore. So if you are a developer, how it deploys, how it scales, how it's monitored, how it's metered, how the performance characteristics show up in specific loads, how do you
Yeah,
monitor for.
so piping issues basically.
Yeah, so all this is your headache as developers, right? So and that's where DevOps also is so prominent.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was just about to say.
yeah. So this is the essence of I think new age software development, irrespective of whether you're in services or products. I think that's the norm going forward as well. You will have to know about all these things, right? In some form, like I said earlier, you may not have the necessary. You might be like a super skilled, deep expertise in all these areas, but you'll just have to know enough. And there are a lot of resources, by the way, these days. So you just have to know enough to kind of tie everything together and architect a system that works end to end, which includes from your developing to deploying, operating, and managing the infrastructure, right? So this will be done by the same 5-6 member team that probably the same size team that you would have in the past, except that they're now doing a lot of things together, right? They're doing developer and development testing, load testing, database administration, storage, networking, all of them. That same 5-6 member team will do all of that today.
Yeah, a lot of automation happening basically now in the environment. Yeah.
So to also add upon, since you brought up also the microservices and architect point of view, I would like to put in a shameless plug, if it's okay with you guys.
No, that's perfect.
Absolutely.
So the thing is, so when AppNox was RCTO started before I joined, so I joined as a late co-founder. So it was built really with the backend was built with Go. The resume parsing engine was built with Java, and then we have all the NLP built in Python, and then there is this node server which sends and receives data. So everything had sort of like their own database, and so they were actually like different microservices. So what I ended up doing is, and they were using different databases, and which is I mean, ideally, every microservice should have its own database, but not in the way that I found them in when I joined RCTO. So I come up with this. I've built this really cool tool, which I think is really cool. Is some so if you know gRPC or protobuf, right? I'm not sure if you guys know about those things. So that's basically to make an RPC call from a language from say from Java to Python or something like that. So what I've done now is, all I need to do is just declare my Django models, and I've written the scripts. So once you apply those scripts to your Django models, it's going to convert them into proto files, which can be translated with Google's gRPC tools to any other language. So what's ending up happening is you can use the Django ORM, you can access the Django ORM from any language now, which I'll be open sourcing too soon, and I'm going to give a talk next week. So yeah,
Right.
that's probably something that people might find interesting if you're into
Yeah, that's
microservices.
interesting for a techie. Yeah, for
Yes,
sure.
yes, Dilip, awesome tool. Looking forward to open sourcing it so that people can
Yeah,
learn
sure
from it.
thing, sure thing. Yeah.
Yes, actually, just to add again, right? So I think
Yes.
just, I'll re-emphasize what Dilip just talked about. So the point is, he just I don't know if if you're listening closely, there was at least like 5 6 tech stacks, full-fledged tech stacks, parts of it used to build a service or a solution or a product, right? So it was Node.js, it was Python, which also had a data science part, NLP. You had Go. You had a lot of moving parts. So the point is that there these were just brought together in a meaningful way that makes sense for that business or that product, right? It's not about kind of being hardcore in each of these, but knowing enough to kind of bring them together meaningfully that is relevant to your business or product, right? And plumbing, I actually like to call that in a lot of ways plumbing, because I think zRPC is a good example. Like you might have an existing tech stack which you want to communicate with a service that's probably developed by another party, could be another team in a different tech stack also. Using open source, which I think Dilip would again probably share it with everybody, to kind of use open source technologies to actually compose and plumb different capabilities across different tech stacks is also something that we see a lot these days. You're not necessarily, the other part I want to emphasize is that you don't necessarily get married to one tech stack and stay with it, right? You will have to find ways to work with different tech stacks because they have very, very powerful capabilities on their own. Like for example, Python is like probably one of the most powerful tech stacks for NLP, data science, machine learning, statistical analysis, and so forth, right? It's one of the foremost. So it makes sense to use that tech stack for a specific capability around data science, like sentiment analysis or natural language processing and so forth, right? So plumbing, composing different tech stacks is also something I see a lot these days. Again, thanks to open source and open technologies.
Yes, absolutely. And what are your thoughts about microservices? There are some pros and some cons. Manoj or Dilip, anybody would like to answer?
Yeah, so I think I mean there are lots of pros, but I think I can bring up a con. So one of the things is orchestration is a really big problem when you do microservices, because you need to discover your services, and then you need to properly communicate with them. You need to make an account when the services are not running and sort of like queue them and retry them. So that one part is like really challenging. I mean, that's the only con that I could really mention, is orchestration. But other than that, it's always better. So microservices is always better compared to a monolithic any day, I'd say.
And what are the things that goes into choosing a tech architecture? Like suppose there is a e-commerce site, somebody wants to, the management doesn't
Okay.
care about the tech stack, whereas the architect is in charge. How do they choose? Going?
So for us, it's been the problem statement. So when the so one of the things is like he mentioned, NLP. I mean, Python is really good at NLP. No other language comes real close to NLP as Python does. So we are using it for that purpose. And in Java we found this library that was actually built in Java. Uh, uh, so we wanted to extract all the details from resumes, right? So all the skills, all the number of years that he has worked before, all the institutions that he attended. So rather than to build it from scratch, we wanted to use this Java library that was already there on GitHub. But then it's built on Java, so I mean we couldn't find any other library which does the same thing, or else the alternative is to implement it from scratch, which is not something that we can afford at the time, because time to market is very essential. Just put it out there, see how it goes. If it goes well, build something on our own. So since we didn't want to build it on our own, we just used Java. So yeah, the thing is you can sort of like have different teams, or have like different people working on these different products in sort of like a closed sort of like an ecosystem where it can advance faster, not worrying about the side effects that it has on the others, as long as the API that you're exposing to others doesn't change. This can go in its own velocity. So yeah, I think it depends on your problem statement, choosing what type of tech to choose. I mean, sorry, deciding what type of tech to choose.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
what
it's a
are
very
your
good point,
thoughts?
actually. Sorry.
Yes, yes. Please carry on, Manoj. Yes.
Yeah. So I think Dilip made a very good point, right? So these days, right? I think even in India's startup ecosystem, competition is fierce, and if you don't get your product or service out in the market quickly, you will just be out of business in no time, right? Either locally in the country or maybe even in the global ecosystem. So the competition is fierce, and all that matters really is how can you get a meaningful product or a service to the market quickly. And you cannot be married to, or fantasize about one specific tech stack because you have some background. If that particular domain requires you to actually adopt something that is really very prevalent in that space, like Python in data science is a great example. Similarly, there are sweet spots for different technology tools. Java has a sweet spot in some areas, right? And Node has some sweet spot in some areas, and Python has a sweet spot. So the idea is to kind of compose. I use the word compose because that composition is what we do in architectures today, right? We really don't have the time to build everything from scratch using our favorite tools or languages. We don't have the time to actually see how the market is going, or see if the community pulls a particular version out stable and all that. So you don't necessarily you have to be agile. So the best way to do it is to basically work with whatever is best in that area, learn just enough to be able to put things together in a meaningful way for your product or service, and then ship it as quickly as you can, right? So otherwise you'll just be out of business, so you won't be able to compete, right? And in fact, to give you another perspective, Uber, I think has around 75 microservices, right? Although as a consumer, you might actually see a simple, cab booking interface. Behind the scenes, there are around 75 microservices, and apparently they're being developed in around 12, 15 different stacks, right? It also so that also goes to say that people find what is the best fit for a specific need in a specific domain, and b also sometimes it also, like, time to market is everything. So it may makes, if two technology stacks fit the bill exactly the same way, I would probably use the one that my team is comfortable with. It could be a team of three people, or it could be a team of just one guy to start with. So people might just choose Java because they're comfortable with it. And Java is probably in one area as good as maybe anything else. So I'll probably choose Java because I'm comfortable with it, right? So it's a matter of how fast you can get it out and how fast you can compose it so that it is a meaningful product or a service.
So Manoj, I had a question. Can I butt in? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So the question was, uh, do we? So what are some of the companies or startups that you see, at least out of Bangalore, which you believe we should be emulating here? I know there won't be. I mean, we can't get into details, but some of the examples or startups you see which are showing this kind of trend or long-term vision.
No, I think it's very difficult to probably put a finger on one or two because I think the startup ecosystem in India, is probably as good as anywhere else in Bay Area or in Israel or whatever, right? So I think most of the companies, I think Dilip is also a co-founder and a CTO in a startup, right? So and he talked about how they actually put a complex product by stitching together different tech stacks and microservice architecture and all that, right? So I think everybody is probably in their own way doing the right thing. It's difficult to probably say that one company is doing it right and the rest of them just look at it, because each domain is different. Healthcare is different from retail, and maybe banking financial services is different from pharma, or it depends, right? So uh,
Right.
but I think in general I see that to all the so I've been closely working with the community, been active in meetups over the last 2 years, right? So I see that the de facto way of doing it is cloud native microservices, containers, DevOps. I see that as a common approach across all startups irrespective of which domain or which industry they are in. I see that everybody are kind of doing that. And in fact, if you think, if you are actually not doing that, there's a good chance that your technology will not scale, and you would probably be outcompeted. So I just see that whoever I meet are probably doing things right, and using the relevant technologies. And the good thing is also that most of the folks are also using open technologies. Open source is doing really well,
Right.
especially the folk in cloud native and containers and so forth. So I think it's I won't want to pick up one company, but I think generally people are doing the right thing, especially the ecosystem in Bangalore.
Right.
Okay. Fine. Any more questions from audience for Dilip or Ashwin or Manoj?
Yeah. If anyone has questions from the business side, I can definitely answer because I'm more of a business guy than a tech guy. So if anyone has any business questions.
There is one question from Avinash on how to create a app that will allow you to post music and get reviewed. I think we will take that question separately. We will conduct another session on
Sure.
creating web apps, web services.
Yeah.
Probably Dilip can join and answer those kind of questions.
Sure.
Okay. Fine then. It has been a wonderful experience to speaking to all of the panelists. Thanks Manoj for coming. Thanks Dilip, Ashwin. Okay, it was
Thank you
been
so
really
much.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So especially for organizing this, right? So it's basically I think a good platform, I think, to have an open discussion from people in the field, right? We start people, entrepreneurs themselves and all that. Arvind, especially you for actually having this forum and getting a very vibrant community people who are aspiring to actually get into startups or technology. I think this is probably a good initiative. Kudos to you as well.
Thanks, Manoj. In fact, I realized I also came to know about a lot of critical things only after meeting people. And it would have taken years before I get the pointed in the right direction, which I could have gotten it earlier if I had spoken to the right person, okay, for a few minutes. So that's why I thought like maybe discussion forum like this where like industry speakers like you who have got good experience and been there and done it can share the experience with others, then it will tremendously benefit everyone, and they don't have to they don't have to do things from scratch again. They could stand on shoulders of giants. So in that way, thanks to all of the panelists for coming and sharing their knowledge.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you, Arvind, so much. I second that also completely. I've gone through the same problem. So,
Yes,
yeah.
so especially startups, founders like us, right? Like we try one technology and it won't work, and after 2 3 years, somebody would have told like you should have used Docker instead of this. So then we realized, why didn't I think of it before why didn't I ask somebody else before? But the problem is like, how do we even know that that kind of problems exist? Then only we can ask somebody, right? So there are unknown unknowns, and for getting light on these unknown unknowns, it's good to interact with somebody who in the field, and that kind of interaction opportunities are very limited. Only in some selected meetups, okay, we get those opportunities. And one more thing I want to point is like there is a good conference on artificial intelligence and machine learning called the AI Dev Days, which is organized by CodeOps, and I think Manoj would have more information about it. Manoj, can you please tell about it?
Yeah, sure. Just before I come to that, I think on the point that you just mentioned, so I'll just probably just maybe just take a minute. So I think a lot of folks, I think I'm seeing a lot of questions as well, right? So and a lot of maybe as you rightly pointed, Arvind, is guidance from people who have been there and done that, like startup entrepreneurs like yourself, Ashwin or Dilip, who have probably gone through that cycle, been in the trenches. It's half an hour spending with entrepreneurs who actually have gone through that whole cycle is probably more valuable than 20 hours spending on a book, right? So my recommendation or suggestion to participants here is that please make time to actually network with people in the ecosystem, and people in Bangalore at least are fortunate to have a very vibrant meetup ecosystem. Where you just name a technology, you'll have at least 5 meetups on that area, right? And a lot of good guys who are coming from across the board, uh, sharing their experiences, and it's an entirely free platform, right? So please feel free to join the meetups that you on technologies or on areas that you like, and and uh, and make sure that you network with people as much as you can over the whenever, at every possible opportunity. That's my advice, because sometimes you might spend 6 months on your own trying to figure what to do, and the time wasted is sometimes you won't get it back. But rather, if you get that advice from somebody in the field for 5 months, it will help shape a lot of decisions in your career as well, right? So uh, please do network, join meetups, join forums, be active online offline communities. That will really help shape the career in more ways than one. So that's one I just wanted to part with, that one thought. I probably didn't touch upon it earlier. And the forums like this are also very useful. So make a point to actually be a part of communities in some way or the other. Like Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn said, who you know is what you know. So that really helps. So the last point here. So thanks for the opportunity. I know I probably spoke a lot. Probably took time off other speakers as well. So um, uh, so I've been part of the community closely for the last 2 years, working with CodeOps. Ganesh and Hari were co-founders, and they're very passionate about the communities. They actually actively run around 8 meetups, free events that happen every weekend almost. So we, are organizing an event in March 9th in Bangalore. We are trying to get together one of the best speakers from across the world on the field of AI and ML. Speakers from the likes of IBM, Amazon, uh, Microsoft. We have some great researchers coming in from Australia and India. And speakers from Google, Microsoft as well, IBM. So I think we are excited about this particular opportunity to bring the best in the world to speak on this relevant topic. AML is as relevant as as any topic today. So I'll just probably it's aidevdays.com. I'll just probably put it up on the chat window. So basically, feel free to check out the site. We have details about the